All right, so we have our finished item and we're ready to go ahead and attach our tatting. I went ahead and ironed it already and we're ready to attach. So the three things I'm going to use today are my trusty scissors. I just love these. They're nice and small, sharp, and they fit in my bag. Trusty scissors. And then I like to get a thread that matches my tatting thread pretty well. This is just a standard ecru cotton thread. Really, any thread you would typically use for a sewing project would work for this. You just don't want anything that's going to be too thick. So you wouldn't want to use an upholstery thread. You want something light so it won't show too much. Then I just use my standard sewing needle, a universal needle, something that you might use for mending. You just don't want something that has too large of an eye on it. So not an embroidery needle, but a standard sewing needle should work for this. This is not a very big project, so probably about 3 feet of thread is going to be plenty for this. So I'm going to cut it, thread my needle, and then I'll show you where we'll go from there. So I threaded my needle, and then I went ahead and made it a knot at the end, hooking both ends together. But I just made a simple knot. Then you can either pin your tatting down, or you can leave it free. I'm going to go ahead and leave it free so that I can adjust it. Because it's a bag, I'm going to open this up, unzip it, and then put my hand inside. At this point, I'm going to rotate the tatting. You can work really from either end. You can go left to right or right to left. Really, whatever your preference is, whatever is comfortable. If you're right-handed versus left-handed, it's probably going to be a different direction. So for this one, I'm actually going to rotate it and do it the opposite of what would be comfortable, but I'm going to do that for this video because I can show what I'm doing better. I'm going to work from the bottom of the purse. I'm going to position the tatting how I want it. And I know I want that first ring to kind of line up with the bottom seam of the bag. So I'm going to start off by placing my needle and thread right through the fabric and pull the needle through and tight. The knot's going to show a little bit, but it won't in the end because once the tatting's attached, I'll pull the thread and it'll cover that knot. Then all I'm going to do, and you can do this really to attach any kind of tatting. This is the way that I like to do it. If I don't tat directly to the fabric, then I tend to attach it this way. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to find where that double stitch are clearly connected or visible. I'm going to put photos on as I go along to kind of help see better in case the video is a little blurry. So I'm going to put that needle between the double stitch from the back. Pull the needle through. It's not as hard as it looks. I'm just going really slow so I can show you kind of what it looks like. You'll find when you pull that thread tight, the thread won't even show and it will bring that tatting really down firm to the fabric. At that point, you're going to bring the needle over the top and reinsert the needle. And then for the next stitch, you're going to go about 1/8 of an inch over from your previous stitch and reinsert again from the bottom. You're going to pull it tight, making sure the tatting is secure. You're going to do the same thing coming up from behind through the back of the tatting, then over the top and back down in. Once you get the hang of it, it's going to be pretty smooth and it'll go pretty quick. So I'm going to work all the way around the ring, and then I'm going to go to the next one and then the next one. So left, right, until I reach the other end. I'm going to go a little bit faster. You can follow along. My big tip would really be to go ahead and always come up from the back of the tatting, pull the stitch through, and then over the top. I feel like for me, that really helps secure that tatting, makes it very stable and smooth. It'll lay nice and flat and it'll hold up better in the wash if it happens to be a fabric item you'll be washing. I'm going to rotate my tatting in the bag And you can go ahead and do this however you need to make it comfortable and get the angle that you need. That's kind of why I like not to pin it down, because it's more flexible and maneuverable. Sometimes the angles can be a little tight and you'll have to come up with your needle through the middle, but most of the time you can catch that outer part of the double stitch like I showed you. And one thing I do like to do if I'm tatting on something I know is going to be washed, I will try and pin down all those areas that I think are going to get extra tension, extra pull, so they won't get tangled. This is just from years of experience for me trying to iron and get things repositioned for my tatting after they've come through the wash. And I usually, if I'm doing a practical tatting, I try and actually make as few picots as possible because those are really hard to keep down flat. They tend to curl and twist. And then you have to pin them down, iron them, untwist them. It becomes quite a process to make sure they are shaped correctly again. So I really, in the making process, try and do as few picots as I can that I know are going to be loose. And that's just a personal preference. It just makes maintenance so much easier. Now, when I do get to the thread spacer, I will try and do at least one stitch over the top of that to hold it down. Sometimes I'll do two because that'll just really help keep that thread pinned down. I'm just going to go over the top and down behind. And the thread really is not showing. As long as you pick a thread that's relatively the same as your tatting thread, it really shouldn't show. Now, when I get to the second ring, I'm going to go ahead and start stitching at the bottom of the ring or where that ring begins. And then I'm going to work my way around the ring about every 1/8 of an inch, calling this the bottom. And then as I go around, calling it the top where that ring would close. Let me show you a couple more, and then I'll skip ahead and show you what it looks like at the end. And make sure, like I tried to say before, if this video is moving too quickly for you, you can slow it down by going into the YouTube settings and adjusting the speed of playback. And like I mentioned before, you can really pin this down if you need to. It'll give you really consistent spacing. It just makes everything a little bit more stiff to work with and increases the chances of getting poked. But if you're somebody that really wants it stiff or you need it for your specific project, then go ahead. There's no wrong way, whether you're pinning it or leaving it free. So I'm just going to keep going with this. And you can see I'm almost done with the second ring. Just repeating the same steps that I did before. So underneath, pull the thread through, over the top, and reinsert. And when I get to that thread spacer, I'm just going to stitch that down again as well with either 1 or 2 stitches, depending on what I need to make that lay flat and stable. You can see it's starting to really come together, and I'm ready to start in on attaching or stitching down that third ring. I'm going to do one more, and then I'll skip ahead and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. And if I was to be doing one of these that did have a lot of picots on it, I would actually stitch the picots down, the free picots, as well as the attached picots. But the free picots, I would actually stitch down with probably between 1 to 4 stitches. And I think I usually do, my average is probably 3 stitches to hold the free picots down. if you have a pattern that has a lot of free picots. I usually do one on each side of the picot and one right at the middle or the point of the picot. Just because if you have a free picot, you want to hold it still. So I'm just going to keep going with this, and you'll see how it's going to lay nice and flat and flush. When I get to the end, then I'll show you what it looks like. You can see how this just lays very smooth and flat. This should hold up really well in the washing machine. When I got to the end, I actually did a final knot at the end on the inside, a double knot before I cut the thread. I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you did, make sure and give me some thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, make sure and hit the notification bell.